Okay, thank you for bearing with us. We had a power outage, and I guess it messed up the chat. Here we go from the top, folks. Can we please get a confirmation of audio again, per usual, if possible? Good to go. All right, folks. Here we go. Happy Sunday. We have a lot of slides, and we're already 5 minutes behind. We will do our best to make it through. Here we go. Here we go. Episode 7, the universal vehicle. This is a continuation. If anyone is joining for the first time and or has picked up, a week or two ago, I really, really highly recommend going back from the beginning. What we're doing is we're building a formal practice, basically. So we're going step by step. Each concept, each set of theory and practices that we discuss each week is building. Currently, it's still building from episode 1. So here we go. We're talking about the universal vehicle this week. We have a precious human life endowed with liberty and opportunity. May we make the most of our lives. May we make the most of our lives by at least earning a little bit of clarity about the human experience, or maybe even having a breakthrough and understanding totally the magic of being human. May we at least have some growth of clarity, insight about the nature of our experience. Maybe use our lives to study Dharma or something, right? Or maybe use our lives to realize the magic of being human. So here we go. Let's take advantage of this opportunity. We are, again, hacking the matrix today. We're going through a wormhole. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that, those who are being nice to us may say that our approach to teaching Buddhism is non-traditional, but there also might be groups, individuals that would say that what we're doing is not legitimate at all. And so therefore, let us actually analyze the qualities of being in an authentic Dharma space. So, and also when I say real, authentic or real Dharma space, I don't mean, taking a class on Buddhism. I mean, like actually being in a space where Dharma is being taught. So how do you know that you're in a space where Dharma is being taught? Well, we're going to call it the smell test. There's 6 factors that represent the stamp of authenticity. In other words, the first is the Buddha's prime directive, or a Buddha's prime directive will be, hey, student, seeker, you've got to test this for yourself. You're not allowed to just blindly believe. There is no blind faith is allowed. So if there's any type of blind faith, guru adoration, heads up, a Buddha will encourage students and seekers to test every single thing that is being said. Is whomever's teaching, are they teaching from lived experience, or are they just passing on information in scholastic form? So this is kind of the first indicator. The second is whomever is teaching, has that person, quote unquote, taken liberties with the tradition? In other words, has that person written their own commentaries, books, articles, essays, speaking to, highlighting or speaking to or reinforcing some of the essential principles and concepts, or modifying or adapting to make them more relevant to contemporary society? Is whomever's teaching doing that? Is whomever's teaching encouraging that everybody who's participating debate with each other to strengthen their own understanding, comprehension of the Dharma principles, the theory and practice of Dharma? Where is the teacher stationed? Again, I would encourage, anyone who's interested, take a look at how the Dharma has moved through time, and we will probably all, through common sense analysis, agree that the Western or modern mindset is where the HQ, the Dharma HQ, is stationing, in the process of stationing. So, is the space are the ideas that are being expressed, are they actually challenging, are they challenging our own status quo conceptions of ourselves? Are they making us feel a little bit uncomfortable? If it is the intention of, if it is a Buddha's intention to help us grow, then by definition, what a teacher is going to do is expose us to resistance that we can handle. In other words, not allow us to continue to be comfortable with how we're viewing our own lives and our experiences and our own priorities, right? They're going to push down on our, sense of being, the authority of our own lives, or something like this. And then also, then the sixth indicator is whomever is teaching, pointing to the traditional phrases, ideas, and unpacking them. Okay, so here we go. So obviously we're suggesting that because we're doing those things, that this is as traditional as it gets, folks. We are stating explicitly that because we are doing those things, this is as traditional as it gets. All right, so familiarization, the entire point of study and practice is familiarization to the point of what we call quantum proximity. Again, I'm reviewing, but this is the essential, like all of this is essential. The entire point of study and practice is to become familiar to the point of quantum proximity with the principles that we are investigating, as well as with our environment and its inhabitants. Now, when I say familiar to the point of quantum proximity, what I mean is I get so close to patience that I become patience. For example, I get so close to resilience that I become resilience. For example, I get so close, I get so intimate and familiar with my environment that I recognize my environment as an integral part of myself. I get so close to my friends or my spouse, my loved ones. I get so close to the inhabitants of my environment that gradually I start to perceive and conceive of them as an integral part of myself. This is the entire point of practice, is to become familiar with our environment and its inhabitants to the point of becoming so intimate that we experience quantum proximity and we feel our environment and its inhabitants as an integral part of ourselves. This is the entire point of study and practice. All right, and we're beginning again with the first principal aspect of what's traditionally known as renunciation, but what we're calling participation. It is the determination to free ourselves from our sense of being spiritually homeless, that we don't belong, that we only belong in one place and not all over the place, that we're only home in one place and not all over the place, that we're only responsible for this one small group of things and not for everything, that there's only some select group of people or objects that are sacred and not everything being sacred. So we're trying to renounce our old habit, the habit of viewing the environment and its inhabitants as not sacred, or making a determination to free ourselves from our spiritual homelessness, or since our basic insanity. In other words, we're also making a determination to free ourselves from our sense of actually not knowing, or not even a sense, the fact of not knowing for certain who we really are, why we're here, where we've come from, and where we're going. All right, we're making a determination to free ourselves from our basic insanity and our sense of spiritual homelessness. All right, and it's not just some, in other words, we're a total determination, right? Maximum total determination to eradicate our sense of not belonging everywhere, not belonging everywhere, not feeling intimately connected to anyone, anywhere, and therefore not feeling invested, completely invested in the well-being of anyone, anywhere. And so that's why we call it participation. Are you willing to play with anyone, anywhere, in such a way as to improve the circumstances and the quality of health of anyone, anywhere? This is why we call it participation. Are you willing to play with anyone, anywhere, in such a way as to improve the quality of health of anyone, anywhere, or everyone, everywhere? Okay. So what we're trying to eradicate is whatever is preventing us from adopting that mindset. All right. And because we are, again, being very traditional, we got to review the tape. So let us review what we went over last week. The individual vehicle is what we went over last week. In other words, stated explicitly, the universal vehicle, which we will discuss today, is the natural byproduct of having graduated from the individual vehicle. The universal vehicle, in other words, unfolds organically out of the individual vehicle. And so let us review the individual vehicle. It can be thought of as the first turning of the wheel. It could be as I'm proposing, it can be distilled all the way down to the Four Noble Truths, which is what we went over last week, or the four truths that noble beings realize, or again, as we become more and more and more distilled with the first turning, what we actually realize is that unless we become noble, we can't walk the path. So there's some prerequisite work that we have to engage in and bring to the beginning of the path. What is that? What actually constitutes nobility? What defines nobility? What makes a person noble? A noble person is someone who has basically tried to conquer the world and has amassed some insane set of technical skills and people skills. But they obviously have not conquered the world, and so they take a knee and they're willing to humbly and sincerely seek guidance. In other words, they're really ready to be serious students and serious seekers. Now, why is that considered nobility? Because the combination of those three qualities, right? Technical skills, people skills, and humility. Imagine that you could build a business or a relationship with someone that had expert technical skills, expert people skills, and was totally humble and ready to commit to studying and investigating, the magic of being human. That, the business would last and be amazing. The relationship would last and be amazing. And so that's why that's called noble. So someone who has not, in other words, tried to conquer the world and develop themselves personally and professionally, and has not, after having failed attempting to conquer the world, taken a knee, then this person is not noble, in other words. All right, we got to go. Features of the individual vehicle. Again, we're discussing the features of each of these so that when we encounter a Dharma space, we can ascertain the type of teaching, the level of teaching, in other words, the level of resistance, and whether or not it is the right type of resistance for us. Resistance is required for growth. We need authentic spaces because that's how we are exposed to resistance. And so we need to be able to immediately identify the degree or depth or type of resistance that's available in a space. So that's why we talk about the features of each vehicle. So the features of the individual vehicle, it's publicly available. In other words, it's exoteric. The teacher is the figurehead, right? The teacher is the figurehead, in this case, the historical Buddha. And the emphasis is compassionate expression via personal transformation. The individual vehicle is called the individual vehicle because it means that there's something that I need to work on in myself. I need to transform myself. And by transforming myself, I will relieve the suffering of society because I will not be directly contributing to it. I will not be, you could think of it as a passive passive healing or a passive remedy, right? I'm not contributing. I'm not being a burden or a cancer to society. And that's how I'm helping society heal. At least it won't come from me, something like that, okay? Here we go. So this is also, you can also, when you see Theravada or Hinayana, those are also ways to encapsulate the first turning or the individual vehicle. Theravada has been, translated as teaching the elders. Hinayana is translated as lesser vehicle. And then I obviously joke with translators and even other teachers, whatever. How could the foundation of a building be the least valuable space in the building? If the entire building is literally resting on the foundation, what sense does it make to call the foundation the least valuable space in the building? Obviously, it doesn't. And that's why I've been saying that we need to remember actually that the fundamentals of practice are a really, really big deal. It's a really, really, really big deal. If anyone wants to nerd out and you want to look at the in-depth individual vehicle, it's basically, another way to think of it is the three baskets. These are the sutras, the sutras, the words, supposedly what the Buddha actually said, and they have a stamp of authenticity called, thus did I hear on a special occasion or something, that they will all begin with that. And then again, if anyone wants to nerd out, you could look at all the different, sutras and find the ones that begin like that. And then this is like literally what, from the horse's mouth. The second basket is called the Vinaya. So this is known now as the monastic code of ethics. But again, with maximum love and respect to the lineage, maximum love and respect to the line, it's essential that we remember that the individual vehicle, the first turning, did not begin as a monastic tradition. They did not all live in one place as monks and nuns. They were mendicants, meaning they were traveling. They were travelers. Basically, if we were to understand that in contemporary terms, basically, it was a traveling circus. They were traveling performers, and there was a transactional element to their room and board. They traveled. Basically, the Buddha was a booking agent, and the mendicants, the retinue, were performers, basically, and the Buddha would make deals, sign contracts with various types of celebrities or kings or sovereigns of different spaces to give them room and board in exchange for public performances, right? The Buddha made deals. The Buddha made deals for the retinue and would exchange public performances for room and board. Okay, and obviously then the Vinaya originated out of the ethical code of conduct that was required for everybody who was in the band, basically to help the band maintain face or like a positive reputation. So that's what all of those things. Public performances. What I mean is public performances, artistic, artistic performances in all variety, as well as educational performances in all variety, debates, lectures, artistic performances. So they were basically getting paid to give artistic performances, lectures, debates, etc. And so obviously, there's a certain, in other words, the Vinaya originated out of the Buddha's wish to be able to book the band, to keep the reputation intact. All right, and the third part, the third basket is called the Abhidharma, and this is basically, again, I'm just encouraging, if anyone wants to nerd out and look at this, is basically 75 different categories of experience, 72 of which are impermanent, 3 of which are permanent. I'm throwing that there just to get a little wheels turning, because anyway. So basically, the Abhidharma is an exact map of everything that can be experienced. And then I have a little note here. So I feel strongly that these details will become known experientially through maximum engagement with the world and with study and practice. And that's actually where they came out of anyway, right? That, like, it's not information that was passed down. These are direct experiences, gross, subtle, super subtle, a mapping of everything that can be experienced. And so if we engage maximally with the world, and we're paying attention, we will start to be able to recognize these. And if we had some crazy wish to categorize them, we could also do that. All right, so let's get into the 4 truths of noble beings: suffering, its causes, cessation, and the path to cessation. Suffering, the moment that the car is submerged in water, or the moment that my hand, it touches the hot stove, the moment of that, right? That's what is meant by that. That it happens. That moments, catastrophic moments happen, or just moments of unease or unsatisfactoriness or discontent or sense of meaninglessness or sense of purposelessness. Those moments happen. They don't happen for no reason. They happen for a reason. In other words, there are causes. The causes of direct pain, discontent, disillusion, sense of meaninglessness, not knowing one's purpose, not knowing who one is, all of those arise out of an inappropriate interpretation of our environment. Inappropriate interpretation of environment produces the car submerged in water or the hand on the stove. In other words, I've been cooking a steak, so I heat up the skillet, and then I put the steak on the skillet. And then if I were not to think hot skillet and touch it, it would produce pain. This is why I'm always using that, but it's actually even more comedic but serious. So these 2 are what we refer to when we call basic insanity. I actually have no idea who I am, why I'm here, where I'm going, or where I've come from. And I don't even know that I'm interested. I didn't even know that I was interested in those things, because I'm currently engaged in active misknowledge in the form of craving that which is not real. And so you'll hear, kleshas or afflictions or addictions spoken of in this context. And I gave the analogy of, being addicted to driving my car into bodies of water last week. And even though, right, when we have addictions, we know that they're not, we shouldn't be engaging in them, right? But we do, because we're addicted. So that's the real heavy duty provocation with this concept of basic insanity. Is that's great that you do want to be free from the basic insanity, but that doesn't mean that you just can just because, right? There's some habit, there's some addiction, there's some craving, there's some knowledge of our sense of identity. Water. I don't want to drive the car into water. Anyway, so when a noble being realizes the first and it leads to the practice of the principal aspects of determination be free. Right? The third of a noble being is cessation. In other words, appropriate interpretation. If I appropriately interpret my environment, it becomes impossible for my hand to experience pain. Okay, cool. Thanks for letting me know. What part glitched? We'll take this moment to familiarize ourselves with coffee breaks. The whole thing, it's glitching all the way. Okay. Was there something that was super unclear? A little fuzzy. Was it that way before, or did it just start happening? Okay, so the previous slide. All right. So we'll go from the Four Noble Truths. Maybe they want they want us to do this again. So the Four Noble Truths. Okay. All right. Great. So let me know. Let me know if it's doing it. I'll just pick up from this slide. So we're reviewing the individual vehicle. We're talking about the four truths of noble beings. Suffering. Okay. Suffering, its causes, cessation, and the path to cessation. We talked about suffering as the moment that we experience disillusion, sense of meaninglessness, sense of purposelessness, or some type of direct pain, right? The moment that we experience disillusion, sense of meaninglessness, sense of purposelessness, or some direct, catastrophic pain, the car in water, something, right? Also as a metaphor for identity. That is what is meant by the first truth. Those experiences are not random. They are caused. They originate in something conceptually, and that thing that represents their origin is our inappropriate interpretation of our environment, or our inability to clearly see our environment, in other words. And so this is why they sometimes use the words obstructions, because there's something in the way of me seeing my environment clearly, and through seeing it clearly, interpreting it correctly. Gentlemen, how's the glitching going so far? Can we move forward? Okay. So the combination of these two, we have, we call basic insanity. Obviously, none of us want, let me just give the metaphor too. It's like, remember the time that you were at the gas station filling up and the credit card machine said, out of order, see cashier, and you went into the shop, and it was like kind of cold, wintertime, and you're in the shop waiting in line, and it's kind of busy because maybe the system is down and everyone's in paying at the cashier, and someone comes in and taps you on the shoulder and goes, "Who am I? Why am I here? Where did I come from? Where am I going?" Do you remember that time that you encountered someone on the streets of New York who didn't smell very good? Or maybe in the subway, and the person started shouting on the streets or in the subway car, Who am I? Why am I here? Where did I come from? Where am I going? Right? Remember when you experienced that and what you thought about that. You probably thought a severe mental health. You probably thought, if you were being kind, was experiencing a severe mental health episode, a breakdown, right? Meanwhile, all of us are basically going about our lives actively involved in a severe mental health episode in the form of not knowing who we are, why we're here, where we've come from, or where we're going. And obviously, if we had the choice, we would not want that to be the case. Okay, so then when we recognize, so this is what it means to realize one of the noble truths. This is what it realizes. This is what it means to realize this. I see that. I see that. I am doing that. I do not know for certain who I am, why I'm here, where I've come from, or where I'm going, and I would like to be free of that. Okay. So then this is what the determination to be free and the determination to arrive at correct view, to see things clearly. Okay. So the third is cessation, and we can know, we can intellectually know what cessation is right now. We don't have to directly experience cessation in order to understand why this is the third truth of a noble being, because we can see the logic of the removal of the cause. If I do not touch the hot skillet, I will not experience the pain associated with touching the hot skillet. That's all that they're saying here. Simply, there's more, but we can see, we can intellectually realize the third truth through the concept of cause and effect. If the causes that produce the pain are eradicated, the pain cannot exist. So that's why it's translated as removal of the obscuration. Oh, now I can see that I thought that the water was the road, and therefore I will not drive into the water anymore. I will drive on whatever. Okay, so in other words, appropriate interpretation of environment prevents catastrophe, prevents pain, prevents disillusion, etc. We can dig into this a little bit more. The implication of the third is that basic sanity is our innate state of being. Like that we're actually made of basic sanity. When we remove the causes that produce basic insanity, what's left there is basic sanity. In other words, that's the baseline of experience, is clarity, sense of belonging, sense of purpose, sense of meaning, freedom from pain, freedom from confusion. In other words, basic sanity, freedom from pain, knowledge of purpose, knowledge of meaning, knowledge of identity, feeling at home everywhere. That is our natural, innate state of being. And then obviously, if a noble being hears that, they're like, well, I want that. How do I do that? And so then the fourth truth is the path. I want that. I'm not experiencing that. I want that. How do I do that? And that is the path, the Eightfold Path. That is, again, we're still in individual vehicle land. So the Eightfold Path, we're going to outline here quickly. Starting to fall behind on time, but I'll say we got 25 minutes left because we started 5 minutes late. We might make it through. I'm not sure. I'm going to speed up. The Eightfold Path as a practical lifestyle. So the 8 things that a noble being would engage in. A noble being is already noble, and engaging in the Eightfold Path is going to produce, it's going to ignite or spark an evolution of species. That's everything we're going to talk about from this point on is going from noble, sentient being to noble bodhisattva, heroic being, from noble, sentient being to noble, heroic being. Engaging in the Eightfold Path will produce an evolution of our species from noble, sentient being to noble, heroic being. Okay, so Eightfold Path. First, we're talking about clear view. Obviously, that's the only thing that's going on, so that's why that's always the first thing. The vow, in this case, there's another vow we're about to talk about, but this vow is to commit one's life, to commit this life to understanding clear view, speaking appropriately, behaving appropriately, having a job that is ennobling and value generating. Again, this is my beef with the this slow diminution of the Vinaya, original Vinaya principle of transaction, public performance of art or education in exchange for room and board, having a job that is ennobling and value generating, that's traditionally called right livelihood. Right, monks and nuns don't pay rent, and so, with all due love and with love and respect, diminution of the understanding of Vinaya and what was happening to the original mendicant culture was transaction, room and board earned in the form of the public performance of art and education. Okay, having a job that is ennobling and value generating, mental vigilance, that meaning I'm constantly trying to make sure that what's happening in my mind does not deviate from my investigation of clear view, aka shared insanity. I'm not deviating from the vow I'm committing this life to these things. I'm not deviating from, I'm being vigilant about how I'm speaking. I'm being vigilant about how I'm acting. I'm making sure that I am actively engaged in some type of ennobling and value generating work in the world. The 7th is constant remembering. In this case, it can be similar to the 6th. I don't want to go ham on that. And then the 8th thing is the 8th component is taste of shared identity. So this is again, I encourage you to look these things up on your own, and you'll kind of see why I've changed some of the language, because there's a lot of overlap. Quick coffee break, folks. In other words, the 8th component will be an experiential indication that there has been some success with number 7, basically. That will indicate, start to indicate that we are evolving our being. Just throwing some things out here. Emerson, basically what I'm trying to say with that slide, just so I remember here, is that test it for yourself. This is a Buddha's prime directive. Hey, I would be willing to bet, let's say a Buddha might say, I would be willing to bet that if you did these things, your life is going to be pretty amazing. And so then I'm throwing in a couple cosigns here. Emerson's cosign, do the thing, and you shall have the power. Atisha's cosign, either Yogi Baker can produce cakes at will by following the recipe. If you also want to experience the deliciousness of cakeness, Try it out. Try it out for a year or two or 20. And then, the provocation here from Coach Adi. If you do this, if you do these, Johns, you will find a teacher and you'll graduate into the next level. And we're going to touch again, because the Eightfold Path begins with clear view, correct view, shared identity, right? We got to touch this. What is that? Everything is related to everything. Anything that exists has arisen because of causes and conditions, which means that it's connected to the place that it came from, and the place that that thing came from, and the place that that is, they're connected. And because they're connected, they influence one another for better or worse. Because I'm connected to my spouse, we have an influence on one another. Because I'm connected to my community, it can influence me, but I can influence it, etc. Everything is related to everything. And therefore, everything is connected to everything. And therefore, I should be as deeply invested in the well-being of everything else, as much as I am myself. There's more of the environment. There are more inhabitants in the environment than there is me. And therefore, I should be more invested in the environment and its inhabitants, in the well-being. Understanding, the fundamentals of the practice, the mental vigilance and the constant remembering basically corresponds to this, right? So it's called 6, 7, and 8. So you could distill the inner work associated with the Eightfold Path or the individual vehicle. You could distill the inner work as opposed to the speech and behavior as outer work, and work as outer work. The inner work is to practice cultivating empathy for anyone who suffers for any reason, to develop the habit of prayer, having the praying for the well-being be the reflex, the natural reflex to empathy, for anyone who's suffering for any reason. And then the recognition that prayer is essential, but not as helpful as direct action, and therefore generating the aspiration to perform actions that are guaranteed to be helpful. So then the implication is that if we're doing those things, we will start to experience this word called bodhicitta, which I will touch in a moment. So we're still reviewing, folks. I think we might make some significant progress. Again, we were reviewing the 2 reasons to practice this. One is commonality, and the other is radical selfishness. Am I a human being? I think so. Is the person who's suffering a human being? I think so. Are we the same in that? Do we probably want the same thing? To have the best life possible, to have the opportunity to move around and pursue our wishes to be, to thrive, to live long and prosper. Yes, we probably both want that. And therefore, if I see someone suffering who's just like me, it's probable that they don't want that. And I wouldn't want that. And so let me empathize. This is the first reason to practice empathy, prayer, and aspirational bodhicitta. The second is radical selfishness. It's actually, if I'm going to have any shot at living my best life, at living long and prospering, then it's actually better for me. The best possible situation for me is if no one's suffering, and therefore let me practice empathy, prayer, and aspirational bodhicitta. And then how do we know that we're doing that correctly? We will feel the effects of a successful practice in the form of wanting to be stewards of our environment and its inhabitants. How do we know that we're practicing the Eightfold Path properly? Is naturally we will start to want to be stewards of our environment and its inhabitants. How do we know that we're starting to graduate from the individual vehicle? We will start to feel naturally, organically, spontaneously motivated to be stewards of our environment and its inhabitants. Okay, stewardship, the profound commitment to assist others and maximizing their evolutionary potential, the realization that I also need then to become, I got to become a hero if I'm going to have any shot at doing that. And so that's why we graduate from the individual vehicle to the universal vehicle, or we graduate from being noble sentient beings to noble heroic beings. I need to be a hero if I'm going to have any shot at helping others to maximize their own evolutionary potential. Okay, so this is why bodhicitta becomes the thing. Another way to understand this is the mind, bodhicitta, the mind of a bodhisattva. Right, so so you can think about, if I'm going to have a shot at being a professional athlete, the first thing that I need to do is have the aspiration to be a professional athlete. In other words, movement toward the embodiment of professional athletism, or movement toward the embodiment of heroism, is the aspiration to be the hero, the mind of the hero, right? So this is why bodhicitta is the gateway, the threshold that represents graduation or the evolution of our species into being heroes. All right, and that gets us here. We've got 15 minutes. Let me look at how many slides we got. I can't see this. I think we can do it. Let's keep going, and then if we got to pick up next week, let me also get some coffee. 14-minute countdown. Okay, universal vehicle. Phase 1 of the universal vehicle. This is the second turning of 3. This is can be known as the perfection of transcendent wisdom. This could be known as the career of the Bodhisattva, the hero's career. This can be known simply as emptiness of self and other. If anyone wants to nerd out, you could check out the bhumis, the grounds, the different levels in the corporation. The universal vehicle is also known as the Mahayana, the great vehicle, the Paramitayana, the vehicle of the perfections, which we're going to discuss, or the Bodhisattvayana. Those of us who like to skip ahead or cheat or try to cheat the system, we're all familiar with Vajrayana. Those of us who like to cheat, we got to try to figure out all the shortcuts. I want the thing right now. I want the thing right now. I want to be the boss right now, or whatever, right? That attitude. So we inevitably we find Vajrayana, or the secret vehicle, or what we call universal vehicle phase 2, but that is also Mahayana. So that is also still encapsulated within the career of the Bodhisattva. All right. So let's talk about the features of phase 1 of the universal vehicle. It is also publicly available. It's exoteric. There are more teachers involved than just the historical Buddha. Lineage holders, those who started lineages, or most commonly what are known as Kalyana Mitras, spiritual friends as mentors. You could think of these as elder practitioners that are kind of like saintly figures that have a high degree of wisdom and experience, and when we interact with them, we're like, this person, they just they got game. And but anyway, so Kalyana Mitra, spiritual friends as mentors, and the emphasis, again, compassionate expression via, this is where we're looking at active healing as opposed to the passive healing of the individual vehicle. This is active healing. The expression of compassion through directly inspiring other people. And think about it, if you're going to have a shot at being inspiring, got to be a badass mofo. So if I'm going to inspire anyone, I got to be a badass mofo. So directly inspiring others by being a badass mofo, or directly educating others. So first it is through inspiration, and then through being inspirational, we attract students, or spiritual little sisters or little bros. But through being a badass mofo, through being inspiring, we attract students, and then we educate students. This is the idea of becoming a hero in the universal vehicle. The features of. Okay, so we talked about shared identity, emptiness, the perfection of transcendent wisdom. You'll see that a lot, clear view, correct view, etc. So what's different about the view associated with the universal vehicle than the correct view or the shared identity that's associated with the individual vehicle? So this is where we got to turn up the heat again. Okay. So I'm saying here that this is a higher octave of shared identity. And now I'm going to do something that is completely blasphemous that is completely blasphemous and therefore completely traditional. I'm going to try to take an ancient idea and adapt it into language and concepts that we can work with. All right. And so I'm being blasphemous with the utmost respect. And in doing so, I'm being traditional. So why is the perfection of transcendent wisdom considered to be, or can it consider to be the higher octave of shared identity? Because a way to interpret the principle in the heroic vehicle is that, everything that we experience is basically our creator. We emerge out of what we experience. Our sense of self originates in the environment and its inhabitants. And therefore, our environment and its inhabitants, the environment is our creator, and the inhabitants are our creators. In other words, whenever we experience anything, we're experiencing God, in whom we live, move, and have our being, if you've seen this language. Whenever I experience anything, what I'm experiencing is the point of origin of me, my creator. Okay, so this is how we're taking it up. So I'm not saying that, I'm not making any statement about the existential validity of God or not. I'm saying that the concept of God, because we are in the United States, and our common sense, like our basic, psychic processes have been colored by the concept of, transcendence. We understand transcendence, or the idea or the possibility of some transcendent, magnificent, utmost situation through the word God. Now, the modalities that we are importing have used the word self to represent the same idea. However, when we think of the word self, we think, oh, it's just myself. I got to poop. I'm drinking coffee. I bought a car. Myself as regular, right? But the traditions that we've imported, when they say self, they're saying Atma, the highest thing, right? And so then that's why I'm proposing, just so we can work with the idea that we use a linguistic trigger, that we use the concept of a creator, God, to understand why the clear view that's associated with the universal vehicle is a higher octave. There's more intensity associated with it. Okay, so part of self versus part of God. What I'm experiencing is the highest, most transcendent thing. Everything that I experience is the highest, most transcendent good. Everything that I experience is the highest, most transcendent good, as well as the origin of me. Now, okay, so then why does this make someone heroic? Right? In other words, shared identity in this case, for real. This is shared identity for real, or correct view, clear view, for real. Everything that I experience is the origin of me is God. Everywhere that I go, everything that I can experience, gross, subtle, dream, sleep, in between, enlightenment, everything, period, full stop, everything that exists, period, full stop, gross, subtle, or super subtle is God, period, full stop. In other words, is the highest, most transcendent thing, is made of magic. In other words, regardless of how it appears, It's just my hand. It's made of magic. It's a dream. It's made of magic, etc. Okay, and then imagine that someone were to really see the reasoning associated with that. Well, then then a higher degree of stewardship would, be the spontaneous response or the reflex. Let's say someone were to do that, then I would be instinctually, reflexively motivated to steward every part of myself and to honor and serve God, right? Because again, we're not separated from our origin. Our origin is the most essential part of ourselves, and that's why we celebrate our birthdays. We are connected to, obviously, our points of origin, right? Our points of origin are the most important part of ourselves, and that's why we celebrate our birthdays. We are not separated from our points of origin. Our points of origin are the most important parts of ourselves, and that's why we celebrate our birthdays. Right? So the behavioral implication of shared identity for real, is that I should be celebrating everything that I experience. The behavioral implication of shared identity for real, is that I should be celebrating, honoring, serving, revering everything that I experience. Okay. So properly engaging our maker. So this is a disclaimer for anybody who is starting to graduate into the heroic vehicle. This is a disclaimer, not to give your body to every tiger you see, not to give all your money away to someone on the street, right? How do you properly engage? How do we properly engage our maker, right? Is it a sentient being or not, right? I hold my environment and its inhabitants as sacred. That's the period baseline. In other words, I'm rooting for everyone to win. But just because I'm rooting for you to win, even though I love you and I'm rooting for you to win, you can't bring your heroin in here. I'm closing the door. Even though I love you and I'm rooting for you to win, you can't bring whatever laziness, whatever addiction, right? In other words, so there's two essential parts of discerning or living this lifestyle. One is the baseline view. I'm rooting for everyone to win. The second is I'm going to treat the inhabitants appropriately by observing how much of their own innate divinity they are manifesting. Are they noble? Are they a noble sentient being practicing the Eightfold Path, etc.? I'm observing everyone that I meet, and that's why, living the lifestyle of the first vehicle basically helps you read the matrix, right? Appropriate speech, appropriate behavior, having a job, making a vow to study and practice and understand one's own, experience, right? You can tell when you meet people like that, right? So being discerning when we engage our maker, as a disclaimer, okay? So we're going to close with the good stuff. Do y'all mind if I go a little bit over? I don't foresee us going too much over. Okay. Let me just get a little bit of fuel to close this one out. Familiarization with coffee breaks while we walk the path. Okay, so now we're talking about just like, so as I've said in some more of the produced content, each turning has a theory and practice associated with it. We've gone over the theory, basically suffering, its causes, and cessation, basically, and the practice associated with that being the Eightfold Path of the individual vehicle theory, suffering, its causes, cessation, and the practice being the Eightfold Path. The theory associated with the universal vehicle is shared identity for real. Everything that I see is the origin of me. I'm connected to my origin, but not only that, the origin of me is the most important part of me. And therefore, let me celebrate, honor, serve, revere, etc. everything that I experience. That's the theory. The practice associated with that is what's traditionally called the six perfections. But again, I'm blaspheming In other words, I'm trying to be as traditional as possible in the form of taking the essence of these concepts and conveying them in contemporary language. So we're going to talk about the 6 aims of a bodhisattva, or the 6 perfections. And obviously you got to begin with the hero, another hero here. Shantideva's prayer: may I become at all times, both now and forever, a protector of those without protection, a guide for those who have lost their way, a ship for those with oceans to cross, a sanctuary for those in danger, a lamp for those in the dark, and a servant to all those in need. And then this is the classic thing here: for as long as space endures, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the misery of the world. So this is the vow. This is basically the Bodhisattva's vow. For as long as space endures, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the misery of the world. Now, Tibetan teachers will joke that Westerners can't actually practice Buddhism because, we don't believe that there's a mind, and we don't believe that we're going to continue moving forward. We only believe in YOLO. And so then if someone, if a culture had the common sense view that, there is a continuity of one's consciousness or mind stream or sense of self, then that type of vow could make sense. All right. So basically, what are the 6 aims of a bodhisattva? And again, I'm taking liberties. I'm blaspheming, some might say, but really I'm trying to do the most traditional thing possible. That is to take the essence of the teachings and convey them in contemporary terms. So if anyone were just to do a Google search on the Eightfold Path and like the 6 perfections, you basically see the same thing twice, right? You basically see the same thing. What's the damn difference? So understanding the 6 aims of Buddhism. Number one, I'm moving things around here like I did with the 3 principal aspects, is the vow. Like that is the vow, right? Vow of eternal service, traditionally known as patience. And then, am I singularly motivated to give others what they need? That's traditionally called generosity. And then obviously the implication is, can I? That's great that I'm motivated, but can I give? I'm singularly motivated to give others what they need, and I can. That would mean generosity. That's an aim of a hero, is trying to be able to do that. Can I inspire others and teach them how to modify behavior? This is traditionally called conduct. Can I inspire others and teach them how to cultivate bodhicitta? This is traditionally called effort. Am I a master of theory and practice? This is traditionally called meditation. Have I realized the truth? This is traditionally called wisdom. And we're going to close again with an invitation to practice for anyone who is feeling called to take that type of vow based on logic and reasoning and having mastered the Eightfold Path, and therefore feeling the spontaneous, the natural aspiration to be a steward to the environment and its inhabitants, right? So we're talking about, this is the next stage, the 6 aims of a bodhisattva as a lifestyle, aka as a practice. And again, a Buddha would say, hey, don't believe what I'm saying, but test it out for yourself. A Buddha would say, test these things out and tell me if it doesn't work, because I'm betting everything that if you do these things, it's going to go to an even more level, even more profound level of sense of purpose, sense of meaning, sense of peace, sense of belonging, joy. A Buddha would say that okay, cool, you graduated from the Eightfold. I bet that this way of life produces even more purpose, meaning, sense of peace, sense of belonging, right? And I'm getting the cosign from a couple cats. Emerson, do the thing and you shall have the power. What does he mean by that? Do the push-ups and you will have the pecs. That's what he means. I, the yogi, have practiced just this. Atisha, I, the yogi baker, can produce cakes at will, and they're so good, bro. And if you would also like to enjoy the deliciousness of cakeness, please follow the recipe. And then I'm adding my own little thing here. You know, if you do these things, you'll find a teacher and you'll go even to the next level. And so then understanding these as a practice, you know, a couple questions here. Am I actually ready to take a vow? Because that would constitute graduation into the universal vehicle, period, full stop. Right? It's like, this is a big deal. This is the biggest deal. This is a big deal. Am I ready to take that vow? I should think about whether or not I would bet on continuity of my sense of self in future lives. I would need to, you know, think about whether or not, you know, my environment and its inhabitants have a direct impact on my life, probably. And then maybe there's an optimal way to engage the environment and its inhabitants to help shape the health of everyone, you know. So it can make sense logically. It can make sense logically to take the vow when we're ready. And then, you know, then what's the next step? Am I single? What's up with that motivation? I've taken the vow, but how consistently motivated am I to give others what they need, to cherish others over myself? And can I actually give them what they need? Is kind of answered in points 3 and 4. Well, the causes of their happiness will be behavior modification. In other words, becoming noble and engaging with the Eightfold Path. The causes of their happiness will be becoming noble and engaging with the Eightfold Path. And can I inspire them and teach them how to do that? Can I inspire them and teach them how to practice empathy, prayer, and aspirational bodhicitta? And then, am I a master of theory and practice? And, you know, have I realized the truth? This brings us to the end. We did it. I'm a few minutes over. Chef, will you please set a timer for questions? Set a quick timer just in case there's any questions, or if anyone would like for me to go back to a certain slide or unpack a concept a little more. Happy Sunday. We'll see you next week. Thank you for being patient with us through our the little technical hiccup we had to start. We'll see you next Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern. Sending you all the best. LFG.